I have no idea where this will lead us, but I have a definite feeling it will be a place both wonderful and strange.
Hello, and welcome to the wonderful and strange Twin Peaks Logcast. I'm Kalil, and with me today is the railroad spike to my ear.
Kalil, are you lost?
Are you okay? So many things, Professor.
Why? As you mentioned, yes, I am in fact the professor, the Unplugged Professor. You shall address me in full for this whole podcast today.
Everything's so new. You know, this world around me. Mm-hmm. Things are so strange.
Mm-hmm.
It feels as though I'm on the Wings of Love, episode 25.
Is the episode called Wings of Love or On the Wings of Love? Or I am on the Wings of Love?
On the Wings of Love.
Okay, so specifically, it's just anyone can be on the Wings of Love. It's not specifically you, Kalil.
Yeah. I really like the title.
Why?
It's like clearly related, right? There's a lot of love and sentiment here, but like the wings kind of imply like it's like a flighty, high up sort of sense, but it also has owl wings could be in there, and it's like open enough that several different character arcs in this episode could be like applied to it in different ways.
Kalil,
it's not just like, oh, the condemned woman. Who's the condemned woman? Is it Josie? Yes.
Kalil, I don't want to think about love and the owls in the same sentence because unfortunately we haven't had the best relationship with love and owls.
Unplugged Professor, did you know that if you were to rearrange the letters in the word love, you can get owl?
No, you cannot.
Did you know that if you take
three
triangles and you move them around, you can get three diamonds?
Ah!
This episode was written by Robert Engels and Harley Payton. And I want to get on my soapbox again for probably the 8th, 9th time in this podcast.
Clearly, you got to lift the microphone to your soapbox. It can't reach.
You know what? I am my own microphone. I don't even need a microphone.
What does that emotionally mean?
like Twin Peaks, I operate on dream logic sometimes, okay? No. I can't irrationally explain it.
Okay.
But I think a lot of people want to view Twin Peaks as the direct product of David Lynch. And the analogy I used with you, Professor, one time off pod that you seem to like is that I think you could argue that Twin Peaks is David Lynch's baby. He carried it to term. It is conceived within him. But the ones who then took care of it, right, the caregivers who molded this child include a whole range of people that aren't just David Lynch. Obviously, Mark Frost was one of the parent guardian figures, but you also have people like Robert Engels and Harley Payton. And I was looking a little bit at the information on Harley Payton. So he produced all of season 2, right? Producing role for all of season 2.
Okay.
And he wrote 12 of the episodes. Mm-hmm. And it's like when you've written 12 of the episodes and you have the main producer credit, you've been more involved with season 2 of Twin Peaks than David Lynch was. Mm-hmm. I would argue, and not that it needs to be a competition, but I think it's just to say that there are people other than David Lynch who had a very, very big effect on it, even if it might have been David Lynch's baby at first.
So what you're saying is that David Lynch or somebody recognized this and put it into the Andy and Dick Tremaine storyline that we have in the background.
Little Nicky is a meta-commentary on the state of Twin Peaks and how it's turned into a devil, according to David Lynch.
Okay.
I'm somewhat joking.
Then which one? Then tell me, is it Dick Tremaine or is it Andy who...
Okay. Well, that's really
David
tough.
Lynch is.
You wouldn't want to be either of them, right? Like, Andy is a gentle soul, but we've also seen him have some disregard for Lucy's emotions early in the show. Mm-hmm. That seems to have stopped, but there were some problems, and he's also just not very bright, and in terms of his emotional capacity, he flinches away from things that horrify him very, very much.
Yes.
And he's very emotional about those things. Dick Tremaine, while extraordinarily dashing and quite pleasant, and someone who has a great fashion sense, he can be a bit abrasive with his frugality. Is frugality a word?
It's a word he would use.
It's a word he would use with his cheap cologne slathered all around his neck. Mm-hmm. I don't know if either David Lynch or Mark Frost want to be either of those people. I think David Lynch is Lucy, waiting to find the true father of the baby. Maybe Harley Payton and Robert Engels are Andy and Dick Tremaine.
Maybe.
Or maybe one of them is Dwayne Dunham, this episode's director.
Okay.
Dwayne, I'm going to call him by first name because I'm not sure if it's Dunham or Dunham, so I'm just going to sidestep it and skip the formalities and call him Dwayne. We're on a first name basis now.
I see. Well, I'm glad that you can say that about Dwayne.
Yeah, if you have a problem with that, Dwayne, you can email us at snakeeyedreams@gmail.com or tweet at us. So actually, that'd be really good. Tweet at us at snakeeyedreams1, the numeral 1.
Thank you for your time, Dwayne, if you ever find this.
Dwayne directed episodes 1, 18, and 25. In addition to his directing credits for those 3 episodes, he also was the main editor for Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart, and the pilot episode of Twin Peaks. Fun fact, by the way.
Is it fun?
I think it's pretty fun. So Dwayne, our dear Dewey, is Dewey short for Dwayne, right?
Let's not risk it. We're already, addressing him by his first name without consent.
Initial D, as I like to call him, okay?
Oh, I'm just going to go with okay for now. I'm just going to go with okay. I'm not okay, but we're okay.
So, D-Light, as I call him. He was the editor on the Star Wars film, The Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
That was the movie where David Lynch had been George Lucas's first choice as director.
What?
There's a whole story. I don't know a lot about it, but it's like an actual thing where David Lynch almost became the director of a Star Wars movie.
What?
Yeah, because the first 3 Star Wars movies were not all directed by Lucas, right? There's other directors involved, and David Lynch was in the short running for that. So,
now,
make of that what you will. Also, by the way, thank you, Twin Peaks Wiki, for all the information.
Now, was this pre or post Dune? Because I'm trying to think of a timeline here.
It turns out, when I did my little research here, that Star Wars Return of the Jedi came out 1 year before Dune. So I think the story goes, and this is where I sound incompetent for not doing my research, but I think the story goes that David Lynch had been waffling between ideas, ended up taking Dune instead of Star Wars, I would assume, right? He turned down Star Wars.
By assumption alone, but I'd love the reality where he's juggling 2 large sci-fi properties at once.
Man, I can't imagine what would have happened if Dune would have gone badly. That could have ruined his whole career.
Yeah.
So when we get to the Dune episode, because we are going to do a podcast episode on that, I'll do more research into this.
Okay.
I'll do some intensive Googling. I might even crack out a Bing.
No!
Yeah.
Don't do that to yourself.
Yeah.
No.
So anyway, that's some schematics on the episode. My TLDR with this whole situation is that Robert Engels and Harley Payton and Dwayne Dunham are important. Very important.
They are important people, especially for the structure of this episode. Without them, we may not have an episode today.
And I say all this to front load the fact that we do actually have David Lynch back in this episode as Gordon Cole.
Oh, he's back. You can tell that he's back because you can hear him a mile away.
You can hear him a mile away. But before we get to him, we get his voice through the Log Lady, right? We've talked about a lot how David Lynch wrote the Log Lady intros, and a lot of times we wonder about the potential meta commentary meanings here. This one, the Log Lady, is talking about treasures. Shiver me timbers, treasures. And the Log Lady says, like a classic Hallmark card, that the real treasure might lie within us all, inside our hearts.
It could be. It is
That
one
would
of the
be strange.
options. It is amusing, just kind of getting perplexed on what really makes this happiness. Perhaps it is inside of us, but hey, that does leave the possibility that it's outside of us.
Yeah. What do you think, Professor, would be the source of happiness outside of us?
Personally, I find it in this delicious can of delicious beverage that I have. This is where my source of happiness comes from.
Could you please describe this beverage, not sponsored?
I will describe this beverage without mentioning it. It has the sweet, sweet taste of watermelon, as the overall container has a mighty appearance of a grand, I would say almost a knightly appearance and a kingly appearance, a very medieval style thing. And as a fan of things like Dungeons & Dragons, that makes me emotionally happy looking at it. And I love bubbly things. I love the feel of bubbly things upon my tongue because it has this very thrilling experience for me. I can't really say the same thing for sparkling water because it's so dull, but whenever you put enough sugar in it, it just brightens my day.
So because I am a constantly needing attention, I'm going to do the same thing for my beverage. I am drinking a nondescript mango-flavored beverage that features electrolytes but no sugar. And it is made by a very popular manufacturer, and it has a nice mango-colored label, which I found out recently. I have difficulty determining the colors of red and orange from each other, but I think I understand the color mango.
Now, tell me, does the color of potential mango give you external happiness like this can does to me?
I think it's actually a bit more complex and convoluted than that. I think that seeing the external reality around me, that at least to my brain's perception is real, right? But truly, the only thing I could be certain of is myself. But presuming that this beverage of nondescript name actually does in fact exist, it awakens an internal happiness within me. It strikes an external chord that resonates and is heard by the eardrum of my heart.
This sounds incredibly convoluted, I must say. So the fact that my happiness is brought far more simply means that clearly I'm the happier podcaster. Thank you very much. I wear my crown proudly.
For David Lynch, it seems that his internal happiness is transcendental meditation, which I think I've mentioned at some point here. He's really big into TM, and he has been big into TM since well before Twin Peaks even happened. And there are plenty of people who would read into David Lynch's films, as well as Twin Peaks itself, and look for messages that almost promote TM as a sort of central tenet to David Lynch's philosophy. And this is probably the Log Lady intro that most reminds me of that idea, that there is this sort of wellspring of energy and inner peace within you that could be tapped into potentially. Even just waving that idea out, I feel like he's implying the importance of transcendental meditation, which since then, through the David Lynch Foundation, like in recent years, he's been pushing TM as like a way to help veterans, a way to help like children in schools. And he does genuinely believe that it helps.
Now, for myself, I have been curious on meditation, and that is fascinating to me. I'm not as familiar with transcendental meditation as I am with any type of meditation, but
arguably it transcends the other kinds. It is also kind of tricky to learn because you have to like go to like a certified expert for it. You can't really like self-teach it.
Yeah.
Which leads some people to feel it's a little bit gatekeepy, but I mean, to each their own. But there are definitely a lot of believers in it. But yeah, that's what this quote immediately reminded me of, is transcendental meditation. I think if we were to try to attach it to something in this episode, the closest thing I could think of was probably Ben and his quest for inner goodness and try to find what goodness means.
If you believe it, yes.
But regardless, whether it's a true, genuine quest or an artificial quest, it is still in the narrative. What did you think of when you heard the Log Lady intro?
Overall, just the idea of finding internal happiness is definitely a perplexing one having to question almost themselves for this strange treasure, if you will, if one is to find a treasure and what a treasure means to a person. It's just fun musings in which I feel is just more so gets you in an almost a trance-like state, almost a meditative state while you get into Twin Peaks. That's why I really enjoy the Log Lady intro in general. So
well, and in this episode, Harry Truman is in a trance-like state because he is in his bed, having consumed many alcohols and having experienced many griefs. He is lying in his bed, somewhat conscious, feeling the weight of a woman on top of him.
Which, by the way, can we just address something quickly? In the recap of the episode, it does bring up some important points, but it does really heavily highlight things such as the tattoos or the markings that the
Log Lady, Major Briggs.
Yep, that they both have. And nothing on this Josie matter or what like happened at the end. And we open on it. In an age where like if someone forgets to tape an episode and then comes back in the very next week, I feel sorry for them who were pretty lost in the 90s when we find this woman in Harry's bed ready to get going in one way or another. Jonesy.
Sure. And I mean, I think that Twin Peaks in general is a show that you don't want to miss episodes. Like, skipping episodes is not advised. There are some episodes you could argue that don't move the plot very far, but like the last few, with Josie in particular, have been like movers and shakers. So yeah, if you happen to just skip the last episode, I'm not sure how much a recap would do, but surely you can do a better recap than, you know, what they did.
I think the Queen made a very good choice in trying to skip very important events just to keep up with Twin Peaks.
And just like Queen's song, Don't Stop Me Now, Jones is not going to let herself get stopped in her request for vengeance for Mr. Eckert.
That certainly is the case. She's getting herself ready with this strange liquid, if you will, maybe something that causes hallucination or something or other, but she rubs this strange like golden oil on like Truman's lips and her own lips as he kind of like starts to see Josie inside the background, which, by the way, there's this funny little production error. I know why it is the case, but as she's moving, the strap falls off the side of her dress as she's like leaning in, but then it magically flings itself right back on in the very next shot of her as she continues her assassination attempt?
Well, like the band Queen, there is the song Killer Queen, and that would describe Jones.
That is a way if you consider her queen-like.
And like the band Queen, there is also the song One Love. That's them, right? They have that, like, not the Bob Marley one, but the other one.
You're pointing at me. You are expecting me to have an answer. But I think that we all have come to understand and expect I have varied taste whenever it comes to music. I've recently purchased the Adamanaguchi vinyl for Scott Pilgrim, and I could probably tell you about those tracks, but I'm not as familiar with Queen.
All right, so I just double-checked. It's One Vision. But you know what? That still works for my comparison here. So like the Queen band, there's a song called One Vision. And when Harry Truman, with his little squinty eyes, looks upon Jonesy, he sees Josie.
Yes, it's me. Which, by the way...
Is that your Josie impersonation?
Yeah, sure, why not? It's Dream
It's
Josie.
better than your Pete impersonation, I'll give you that.
Yes, anyway... There's also, like, this point in which I see Truman is deeply asleep, and honestly, with her just moving across the bed on top of him, like, smearing stuff, like, pressing on his lips, I'm wondering how he does not awaken?
It's the deepest sleep of his life, probably.
It is the deepest sleep of his life. Like, I'm just, like, imagining, like, even if her full weight is not on it, your bed is contorting and moving as this woman has pressed in and made a cave underneath your ass as you are...
Like the Queen song, Fat Bottom Girls.
That's actually a song, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. As she prepares, and I'm wondering why these extra steps when she's just like trying, like she's clearly around him. He's clearly staying asleep. Why not just go straight for the cord? Like that's her technique. She goes around, wraps the cord around his neck and chokes him out. That seems like the more best case. Or if anything, instead of like these tiny little bits, hey, not all clots will capture fingerprints. Freaking chloroform. Throw it right under his little nose right there. Make sure he is out.
In the words of the Queen song, Another One Bites the Dust.
Ah!
That was the last one. I'm running out, so it has to end now.
And it's only by Truman's thumb that he's saved. Like, he has his thumb right in between the neck as well as the little string.
Well, then later he procures a trophy to use as a weapon as well, which was just in the bookhouse. I kind of want to speculate that was one of his trophies that maybe he had won in high school, like back on the football team. Because a lot of the bookhouse boys were like high school football stars.
We'll never know.
I mean, maybe
we'll never
find
know.
out.
We'll never know.
You don't know.
I refuse. But no, and I also enjoy the fact that the gun was also placed so close to the bedside because it's almost like a mind trick of being like, yeah, that's what he's going to reach out for, but she's not going to let him get to it. So there was a lot of good choices, but some questionable ones.
So to move away from my nonsense here, I've always found this scene really weird, and this is probably the most normal I felt about the scene. Like, I kind of just used to it by this point. But remember when I watched this episode, I was just like lost, and like I understand who she is.
Yeah.
But, like, if I wasn't podcasting on this show and I just watched it for the first time, like when I watched it years ago for the first time, it's such a non-essential, just rando extra character doing this. And the explanation we get later for it is that it was just probably due to sexual jealousy. And then it's just kind of like, oh, yeah. But it's just
that
like,
makes sense.
I mean, there's so many questions. She could have killed him more efficiently. This whole thing feels bizarre. Why is she like straddling him as this is happening? What's with the stuff with the lips?
Now,
I have a lot of questions, but I gotta say one thing. Talk about a rude awakening. Am I right?
I mean, sure. Is that another musical reference?
No,
I'm just gonna imagine
like
it's just a phrase.
The phrase.
There we go. It's just the phrase. It's
probably a song too.
It probably is, but I think I know the reason for the scene, and it's less onto the motivations on Jones or what that character would have even meant in her own context, but this was a good way to get Truman on top. And
I mean, technically she was on top.
You know what I mean.
Yeah,
take down the baddie, get her, collect her, and take her to the station.
Okay.
So that he can be back, like, just
That's
right
true.
back on the job, right back
That's
ready.
true.
And when even he's encouraged to put it aside, he's like, no, I'm good. I just need some coffee.
Nothing helped him
go.
recover more than defending himself against an armed assailant. It's one of those cases where if this wasn't in the exact circumstances it is, very, very weird to see Sheriff Truman just like gut punching this woman into submission. surrounded by a bunch of alcohol bottles on the ground, this would read a very different emotion if it wasn't for the fact that she did just try to strangle. And as someone who finds like the thought of strangling especially terrifying as a way to die, as I'm sure many people do, yikes.
It's not even like by hands, it's like a wire.
I know, that's gotta, I mean, like his thumb should have been like lacerated to heck.
I was thinking he'd lose his thumb in the middle of it,
he
really.
Probably should have. Unless she's really weak. Unless she really wasn't pulling very hard.
I want retribution for the fact that he did not lose his thumb.
Well, maybe that's what she wants to talk to the South African Council about.
No, she wants to do that because it's going to be a harder sort of legal battle that way.
Right. And what do you think? Do you buy Cooper's explanation that the reason this all happened is out of sexual jealousy? Because Truman immediately is like, oh, yeah.
I think that it is definitely something that Eckerd might want to have planned, and Jones is just kind of continuing with the plan because she is the right-hand person. Very similar to Josie, but she may still be in active manipulated mode. So I can definitely see just Eckerd's will of not wanting someone put their hands on Josie and try to get back, even though that everyone involved is either dead or will not get further involved in that situation. I mean, Cooper is on top of the Interpol Eckerd task. In truth, her trying to go after Cooper, who actively has the documents and trying to procure those, would be the smarter option. But no, it sounds more like an order Eckerd would have given one way or another.
Just like giving the box to Catherine.
Yeah.
So why was she wearing like the nightgown with the stockings then? And on him in bed? I
think that it has to do with the chemical that was given that may have given hallucination. It might have been just a common nightgown that Eckerd enjoys on his women, and she assumes that Josie would have worn the same. So I'm just guessing that it's trying to push the hallucination. So you think that the liquid on the lips then is some sort of hallucinogen of some kind? That's interesting. That she then puts it on herself, though, is interesting, too. Yeah.
Makes you wonder why.
Makes you wonder what she'd see.
Yeah, exactly. Where's our side story? Where's our whole book on Jones? After that whole conversation transpires between Truman and Cooper, Truman reports having just a terrible hangover. Understandably so. And he asks Cooper for some advice on how to cure a hangover. And this advice that then spills out involves nearly frozen tomato juice, a couple oysters, sweetbreads, chestnuts, Canadian bacon, biscuits that have been smothered in gravy. And then by the time he gets to anchovies, Truman's halfway out the hall.
It is a good strategy to get all of that toxic stuff out of your stomach by trying to disgust them. And though this is going to be getting a little bit into our later section, Gordon Cole does pull the same thing on Truman, which you can imagine that's where Cooper got it.
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, overall, and just seeing the joy on their faces every time they get them to try to cough up a little bit more is endlessly entertaining.
Well, and it subtly implies that, because we've seen the closeness between Cooper and Truman, we know they have a very strong partnership, and knowing that Cooper then transferred the same tactics that he learned from Gordon Cole does sort of lend some credence to the idea that Gordon Cole and Cooper had been themselves very, very close.
Can you imagine a drunk Cooper? Like a very heavily induced Cooper.
You said it. Did you say a drink Cooper or a drunk? So I don't know. I mean, drunk Cooper. See, I can't confirm or deny because I don't know if I should say whether or not there is ever a drunk Cooper. Plus, we haven't gone into the book, the Dale Cooper book. Well, there's two of them technically, but My Life, My Tapes.
It's all just him musing drunkenly.
What if My Life, My Tapes is a drunken rant?
Diane, I'm not feeling so good. Diane, there's this bottle that I got from Tibet. It's good.
There's our Drunk Cooper ASMR, available only on our non-existent Patreon. And it's also around this time that we get an additional gift, supposedly from Josie, in the form of a bonsai tree.
Josie, quote.
Josie, quote, because it's actually Wyndemurl.
Oh, no.
It is most dastardly tactic so far.
Bonsai planting.
What I find kind of funny, though, is if it's from Josie, you should definitely check if it's bugged, because it's Josie. So, I understand Truman might have lingering affectations, but as soon as Cooper heard Josie sent this, you should be combing through this thing looking for a trap.
I still find it fascinating that overall it is the choice of the bonsai tree. Where is Josie from?
China.
Okay. And the actress...
They talk about Hong Kong a lot.
Yes. And the actress is?
And the actress is Chinese as well.
Okay, interesting. Now, I'm just curious whether or not she has just a fondness for bonsai. I don't know how bonsais are received in Chinese culture for something that is relatively recognized as something Japanese.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a deeper reason.
Yeah, it's a nice tree.
It's an interesting thought. And I think that it'd be a good hobby for Truman to pick up is to manage some bonsai trees. He needs that piece, the inner piece. Maybe the inner piece that the Logley's talking about is actually developed through the bonsai.
Or planting and bugging things to listen in on people.
Yes. Speaking of plants and how they can be used as plants, they could be, like, things could be planted in them for sound recording. Wyndemurl has the bonsai tree bugged. When they're having this conversation in the office, Wyndemurl starts hearing some information, at which point Gordon Cole,
Cool.
or as I call him, Gordon Cool Cat over here, he shouts, "Bonsai!" It's like those commercials. Bonsai!
No, it's like those movies from World War II.
Oh, movies. Movies, commercial. What are movies if not long commercials?
Narrative structure.
Commercials can have that too.
They can, but usually it's not exclusive.
Fair enough. What is Twin Peaks if not a commercial, though?
A series of narrative structures.
Fair enough. Is there anything else from that conversation with around the bonsai tree you wanted to highlight?
Other than just the curiosity of like his connection to bonsai trees, because that seemed like a very strange comment. But not to mention, they actually do go a little bit more into Wyndemurl and recognize there is a similar use of the drug that Wyndemurl had.
Haloperidol.
Yep, that was also being used by our dear one-armed man.
Philip Gerard.
Correct. So the fact that he uses it, they state, they make the words that lead to the idea that he was faking it and he was just using it off to the side. For one, I'm wondering what sort of side effects that could even have.
Yeah.
For number two, it's, again, assumed.
Well, and I'm a little bit confused. This is something that normally, again, we could do more research and look into, but I like voicing the raw thoughts, and they'll develop as time goes on. We know that Philip Gerard was using the haloperidol as a drug to keep Mike at bay.
Yeah.
Like, it was an antipsychotic, basically. It was something to control the other element of his personality, or however you want to view the dissociation that would happen. And whether you want to look at it from a spiritual or psychological lens, it was a suppressant. Whereas they're claiming that Wyndemurl used it to induce or give the symptoms of mental health issues. That's interesting, because if it's used on Philip Gerard as a sedative, why would it then for Wyndemurl be used as something to give off the impression of something being mentally unwell?
I think that the fact that there's this idea that it was a falselyhood is something that we may not get more information on it. I hope we do get more information on it. If this was the case or not.
Linkage, though.
It is an interesting link, to say the least.
Linkage? That word reminds me of sausages. Now, I'm vegetarian, so I don't like the links or the patties. But Gordon Cole does prefer the patties.
I mean, there's vegetarian variants on that.
There are vegetarian variants, but...
You just enjoy that with some breakfast items.
You're struggling to think of food that doesn't involve meat, weren't you?
I am an omnivore leaning on carnivore.
Just throw in hummus every now and then.
Hummus.
I feel like that's kind of the catch-all, right? Just throw in some hummus.
What is hummus?
It's like bean paste, but it's like it's garbanzo beans, chickpeas.
Why would you have that for breakfast?
With tahini, because hummus can be used for any part of the day.
The only bean that I want for breakfast is a potato.
Are you telling me you've never had like weird things for breakfast?
I want a potato.
You've never like eaten like leftover pizza for breakfast?
I do not want to admit to anything like that because I like to pretend I'm a healthy boy.
I like to pretend I'm an everyman average person. So I too have eaten cold pizza for breakfast.
Neat. I'm not going to admit that on a podcast. You can admit whatever you want. Well, I, like Laura Palmer, am filled with secrets, but the most mundane ones at that.
Meanwhile, I, like Gordon Cole, shout my secrets into the microphone. Speaking of which, because Wyndemurl is listening in this conversation, and he is also about to play some interesting card tricks with Leo Johnson.
Oh yeah, he's got a big flat pile of cards that's all over the place, and he's like, "Here, Leo, go ahead and pick a card.
Any card.
Any card." Arr. And he actually does select some cards, and
would you know it?
It's funny. It's funny. Like these cards look awfully familiar. After all, we've got Donna, who is the queen of clubs.
That's because she's always going to the club. She's always hitting the clubs at night.
Okay, keep it up. Audrey is the queen of diamonds.
Because she's got a wealthy dad. She's got that bling, yo.
And Shelly is the queen of spades.
Because she's buried bodies in her backyard, yo. With a spade.
I missed that episode. Where's my recap on that?
You know, because spades are like shovels. You could use them.
Okay. Then explain this, because there was another card. It's like, okay, and here's the king. And they draw a card. And guess what they draw? Little Dale.
Yes?
Yeah, isn't that funny?
What type was he?
Isn't that funny? Just a king. He is
just
a king. He's a king. He's a king of spades.
I shall quote Nadine. Let's call a spade a spade.
No, tell me more on how Dale Cooper and Shelley Johnson will be together by the very end, rolling over Twin Peaks.
So they're going to become the next new hosts of the American game show, The Price is Right, which oftentimes ends with the admonition that you should spay or neuter your pet. So they should be known as the king and queen of spades.
Let's just call a spade and just say that this is just how it is. So, and of course we need
No, there's one more queen.
There is another queen, and that is going to be Miss Twin Peaks. Whoever it may be, this blank-faced queen will be the queen of hearts.
Hold out from behind Leo's ear.
Mm-hmm. And guess what? That's the queen that's gonna die.
So yeah, we do get to hear Wyndemurl do a comical, like, evil laugh toward the end as it fades out. It's not played for comedy, but it is interesting too, because we are at the point where we literally have an evil laughing mastermind in the darkness. There is a subsection of Twin Peaks fans, I would not say a small subsection either, a fairly decent-sized one, that would look at Wyndemurl and dislike his character as a general trend, because while he can apply some menace to the situations, there is a bit of a sort of corny, potentially even like corny, maybe perhaps campy energy to him.
A quiche energy to him.
Wasn't
a
quiche
delicious
something?
egg-based product.
No, quiche. If something's quiche, it's like describing it. Like,
it describes it as
an
eggy paste product.
Quiche.
It's a delicious little, like, buttery, croissanted product.
It's pronounced kitsch, I think. Hold on.
Nom. Get that sweet, sweet spinach artichoke in my mouth.
I looked it up. It's kitsch. It's an art term that means it's appealing to popular rather than high art tastes.
And I looked it up, and the word is quiche, in which is a French tart consisting of pastry crust filled with savory custard and pieces of cheese, meat, seafood, or vegetables.
I do enjoy a good, like, vegetarian quiche.
I enjoy this at breakfast.
Yeah, let's agree on agreeing on quiche.
Delicious quiche and how one would look at it. Could you tell me, like, what sort of emotions you think Leo Johnson has while he's looking at the queen that is Shelley Johnson?
I think he's saying wife is not goodbye after all. But wife might be goodbye soon.
Maybe, because in truth, that the spades match up. Mm-hmm. I have a strong feeling, and especially since Norma's been trying to push Shelley Johnson with Miss Twin Peaks, and every time Miss Twin Peaks comes up, it seems that Shelley is like the center of it. I have a feeling that Shelley will turn out to be that Queen of Hearts.
I do question this, because I think it was last episode, the one before, you were pretty confident Audrey was going to be the one, and now you switched over to Shelley.
Yeah, there's a problem with that, but we'll get to that later.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it seems that it might not even have to be a romantic thing. Of course, like, the strongest candidate, if we are to go with an emotional Queen of Hearts, will probably be Annie, because even Truman, who does later come around, kind of, like, questions Cooper on, like, is this love?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, for the two interactions.
We'll get to that.
You'll get to that.
There is another possible candidate, and that is Donna, because we see Donna in this episode quite a fair amount. She is following her mom inside the Great Northern. Donna is wearing a rather striking shade of blue in her, like, vest with a white and then with the red skirt. It's a good look.
Yeah,
you know,
it is.
We diss on Donna sometimes, so sometimes I want to, give some compliments where compliments are due. Also, we see yet again for his third episode appearance, Randy.
Randy, I'm glad to have that man back. He is a reliable and
he might be the most consistently returning person of color in the entire cast.
And he is definitely showing that he is a proud member of the Great Northern Hotel, showing great overall service to...
I think he feels the way about his job the way that Mike feels about Nadine.
Oh, that look, that lollipop. Ooh, great
that
time.
Lollipop.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked, how was everything? And Mike says, everything was wonderful.
Oh.
So if you're ever worried about the consent issue, it seems as though Mike is totally okay with it. And we got to assume at this point he's 18. And we have to, for our own psyches.
Now, mind you, there is that. And we can hope that he's 18. I know I'm personally hoping he's 18. We know that Nadine, at this moment, is happy to be with Snake, but we've seen little bits of Nadine, of the original Nadine, come back and recognize that she is not seeing out of one eye. So I'm hoping that part of Nadine will also consent to this, because there's still some concern here.
They might synthesize. They might form a sort of perfect union within one true Nadine.
That might actually be where the story goes. That's almost how I'm half expecting the story to go.
Cannot confirm nor deny. So Donna talks to Audrey after this for the first time, I think, in 20 episodes.
Yeah, it's not, I imagine that they would have more to say about, the special note that they all got together for, and then we didn't see anything after. It's oh, that's a weird note. Well, anyway, guys, let's just go home. Have a good one. I'm just gonna take some of these chips and peanuts to go.
And it's really disappointing because I think one of the most unfortunate dropped plot lines of season 1 going into season 2 was that there was a moment where it teased Donna and Audrey teaming up. They were in the girls' bathroom at the school, and Donna and Audrey were discussing the possibility of, trading information because they were both interested in uncovering more of the mystery involving Laura.
Correct.
Obviously, Donna had more personal reasons because Laura was her best friend, and Audrey had reasons because she wanted to be involved in the mystery and she wanted to appeal to Cooper and be useful to him. Mm-hmm. But they both had this sort of shared interests. And then that is never touched again. They just do not interact.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden they do.
Yeah.
And it's fine. It was an okay interaction, although we really don't have much information from Audrey. Donna's asking, do you have any idea why my mother would know your father? And Audrey doesn't really have anything that comes to mind right away. Donna at that point brings up how Ben had visited Eileen yesterday, and now Eileen went to go see Ben. And that's, creating a bit of a pattern 2 days in a row. This also was interesting to me because in the conversation, Audrey suggests, hey, Donna, maybe your mom is just helping Ben with the Stop Ghostwood campaign.
Yeah.
But Donna quickly dismisses that as a possibility because she says if that was the case, her mom would have told her, which I think is interesting. And it does suggest that Donna and her mom have a very open, close relationship to the extent that if her mom was involved in anything in the town, Donna would know.
Absolutely. And it seems that overall her driving over here was very concerning. And yeah, I have a strong inkling on what's going on. And oh boy. Can we also appreciate how pink Donna's car is?
I can appreciate it.
I wonder if Eileen has the same coat of pink, because it in this gray sort of cloudy day, it definitely stands out, to say the least. Ugh. Anyway, but it seems that Audrey kind of complies and just allows Donna to go through her secret tunnels through the hotel.
At which point they can overhear and look into the conversation where Ben is effectively quoting the song Come On Eileen by the Dexys Midnight Runners.
What?
And the words of the song, Tu-ra, Lu-ra, Tu-ra, Lu-ra-ye.
He did not say that.
That's in the song. My point is he's saying, come on, Eileen, please hear me out on these letters.
Yeah, it seems that a series of letters were sent out about 20 years ago, and seems that
she wants to return them.
She wants to return them.
Return to
but
sender.
It seems that Ben is trying to push towards her, saying, no, you could have been the best thing to happen to me.
You've had them for 20 years.
You've had them for 20 years. I'm trying to be better myself. And it seems he is really laying it on thick towards Mrs. Hayward, and she is not having any of it.
She says that this is just going to open old wounds.
Yep, and sometimes it's just best not to try to make things better.
You'll make it worse.
Yep.
And this is where, we get into that area of, do we trust Ben, do we not? And if he is lying, the question I would ask you, Professor, is what do you think he would be doing this for?
If he is trying to do...
Because if it's genuine, I think this makes sense. Pretty, like, self-explanatory.
If not, him trying to push this more open Ben, this more genuine Ben, he will have to kind of like take out his scabs and just like scratch at them until it opens up some blood in order to be more convincing, even possibly towards people like Catherine or any other eyes that may be set on Ben, being like, I'm turning over a new leaf. This is someone that I have been involved with.
Character.
He's trying to, he's either, I believe, trying to genuinely be better or give off an illusion by committing to that character of being better. I'm starting to lean on the first one for one specific idea, and we're going to talk about that later.
You're leaning toward the idea that it is genuine.
Yeah, because there's something going on with Ben and
with his carrots?
With his carrots.
Okay, good. You got to be careful where you stick your carrot.
You got to be careful where you got those carrots. It's not really the carrots, but it is carrot adjacent.
It's okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, but we all know what's going on, right?
Also,
there's no way that it can be anything else other than like what it clearly is that Ben is trying to hide, right?
Explain.
She's literally saying, "Don't talk to her," being Donna Hayward. And it seems that Donna is quite concerned, and it seems that even like later on, Doc is trying to deflect it.
Sure.
We all know that it's just like that Donna...
Professor, just go and say it. You know, it's like John Justice Wheeler always says, tell the hardest truth first.
It's not hard truth. Yeah, it's a soft truth.
Tell me the soft truth.
The soft truth is that likely Donna is part horn.
Where's the horn at on her body? Is she like a unicorn?
She could potentially be Ben's spawn.
Oh, okay. How would she be the least or most or medium adjusted child if she is?
I mean, it's dependent on her upbringing.
I guess.
So overall, with staying with her mother and Doc Hayward, I think that she had a pretty good upbringing with them, at the very least. I don't know about her history and her times with Donna and that one man. What was his name? Tom? Theodore? You know that one person that she had a nice little time with? That she was hanging out with Laura that we got to explore while Harold was writing down Donna's story.
In Donna's story that she told?
Yeah, in Donna's story that she told
I don't remember
Harold.
his name.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Tim.
At the water area with Laura. Okay, in
Yes.
the memories. Okay,
Yes.
okay, gotcha. I think one interesting thing as well is that if this is genuine, right, and he's trying to do this reform act, he's, talking about how much he wants to hold Eileen. But Ben's married. Ben is still married to Sylvia Horne.
Is he?
Yeah.
I think Sylvia Horne's just dead and buried somewhere.
We know, we haven't had an establishment.
She fell over the waterfall that's next to the building.
Could you imagine if they just got divorced, but Audrey never brings it up, Ben
she
never
got
brings
divorced.
it up, Jerry never brings it up.
Through death! Pew, 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 pew.
Wait, Okay, my favorite theory would be that he sent Bobby. Like, in the middle of the Civil War campaign, now, General, I got one more task for you. I got a pesky wife of mine who has some northern sentiments, and I'd like you to take all glory and silence her.
Oh no! Oh no!
And then Bobby's like, "Sure, man, whatever." And then Bobby just does it. Hey, it's not the first man Bobby's killed, Wait, it's her first woman. Maybe
What?
it's his first woman.
No, Bobby hasn't killed anyone.
Okay, fine. Okay, well, teach their own.
What do you mean, tweet? It's not an opinion.
You can interpret things.
Bobby has not killed anyone.
Okay.
What?
Sure. No, it's fine. You can think that.
What?
Nothing. It's fine. So anyway, later we have the James side quest, where we get this postcard from San Francisco, which you did not like the layout of that postcard. You were laying into that
There
layout.
were like 3 different things to the Golden Gate Bridge. All I'm asking is like, if you really want to like push the Golden Gate Bridge, take one of the other photos and then make it like the 2x2 format square, just enlarge it in that space and just really push that highlight, because otherwise you're like putting out other potential spaces in San Francisco, which I believe deserve a highlight. San Francisco is a very bustling city filled with all sorts of interesting cultures that I personally would like to explore more of, other than specifically the bridge I will be stuck in traffic on.
What I want to explore more of is the other mail that came in.
Yeah,
because as Donna's holding this...
Kalil, could you tell me why Donna has the mail of a man named Jeff Moore from Studio City, California, instead of, like her address of 552 Oak Street, Twin Peaks, Washington at zip code 55215. It seems like it's a little off, not only because A, that zip code doesn't exist, like Twin Peaks doesn't actually exist, but it does confirm that it's in Washington, but also on the sort of stake on we're a little bit away from Studio City, California, aren't we?
So there's two possibilities.
Who's Jeff Moore?
One possibility is that Jeff Moore and the Studio City, California envelope is some sort of production error or just simple oversight where they were just like, we just need to have an envelope real quick to show the mail. No one's actually going to look at this thing. So we're just going to throw some random letter we have around from our actual like studio where we're making Twin Peaks in California. We're going to use that on the scene.
Poor Jeff Moore.
Option number 2 is that it's actually a very clever and subtle meta commentary that the production of the show is infesting into the show itself. And that it's all a very deliberate maneuver to inject that sort of sense of realism, questioning the reality around you, the construction around you. You know, is this all real? Are we just on a set?
Kalil.
It's like the Truman Show.
Kalil.
It's like the Truman Show.
I suffered through Tojimura for the longest time because I'm not allowed to look people up. You're allowed to.
Yep.
So why can't you just look for Jeff Moore Twin Peaks?
I am looking right now.
And just help me here. Help me understand. Your face makes me not want to understand.
So I'm looking up with Jeff Moore. This is actually very enlightening.
Oh.
There's 2 Jeff Moores associated with Twin Peaks.
Of course there friggin' is.
The twin Jeff Moores.
The twin Jeff
One
Moores.
of them is a bellman at the Great Northern. He has like a name tag that says Jeff Moore on it. He is in an episode we haven't seen yet, but that doesn't matter. He's just a bellman, okay? He's played by some guy named John Charles Sheehan, okay? So not Jeff Moore playing Jeff Moore.
So can we ask whether or not like someone else has been involved inside of the Hayward household with another person from, well, the Great Northern? Maybe so.
However, he is also, there's a real Jeff Moore who worked on Twin Peaks.
How strange would that be to see like a character called Jeff Moore while you, Jeff Moore, are working on Twin Peaks? What did Jeff Moore do?
So Jeff Moore is what you call the property master or prop master. So there's actually an interesting interview I just happened to find here. It's from the Twin Peaks Archive blog spot, and there's this 2013 interview with Jeff Moore. I'm just going to say a sample of it. Read the whole thing for yourself if you're interested. It looks interesting just from scanning it here. But the interviewer here, Brad, asks, what is the technical definition of a prop master? What goes into the job? And Jeff, to summarize, says, the prop master does everything that is needed in the script. So, for example, if it says in the script, Bobby reaches into a boot, opens the boot, and pulls out a mini cassette, now the prop master has to go get the boots from wardrobe, but then it has to become a prop because he has to take the heel out and placing another prop within that. So anything where an actor or a scene requires it to function, move, eat, shoot like a gun, all the moving things an actor does. And in this interview, Jeff gives his favorite example of this was the Zippo lighter that he had to like acquire for like, I'm assuming this was Bobby's like using the lighter to like make the sounds. That's my guess. Because he talks about how they have a distinct sound.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was involved in props.
You know
I'm going to wager a guess that this is his actual mail.
Jeff Moore, thank you so much for your hard work. Honestly, as a person, I do respect you for that, and
as
I thank you.
I'm going to give you respect you.
I'm going to give you a funny voice though, just because I think that this is a hilarious thing in which you're like, okay, well, damn it, we need some mail. Let's see around here. Fucking, you know, I got some mail here. We're gonna like just gotta throw it on the desk there. There you go. Now, done. You're done already. Here's some mail. Just hold this. Look at it. You're good. So, no, I am thoroughly entertained that the prop master's mail has made it into Twin Peaks, and you have been immortalized by that way. So, congratulations to you, Jeff Moore.
Do you want to talk about the mail in the show, too?
Like yes.
The postcard? Yeah, probably not as interesting, because it's James. But James says that, you know, Donna was right. Everything is different when you're on the road. Feels better. And his next stop is Mexico. San Francisco was very good, by the way. Very, very cool. James says he's going to be back with 1 million stories. He promises Donna, and he says he loves her.
I wonder how he's getting the money to travel to Mexico.
I mean, he used everything in his savings account, which wasn't much. Already?
Yeah?
I don't know.
Maybe there are more Evelyns out there that may be able to help fund his cause.
Yeah, because even if he's not doing much else, even if he lives off the land, he's riding a motorcycle that takes fuel.
Yes.
So, like, at the bare minimum, even if he is, like, camping outdoors finding food on his own, fending for himself. He needs gas.
I'm gonna have a million stories for you, Donna. And one of them is how many times I had to outrun the cops after siphoning gas from the station. I'm a convict now, but I'm glad that I can at least get this mail out to you.
And then shortly after that, we get the scene that you were kind of alluding to earlier with Doc Hayward, where he's trying to go up these stairs, and Donna just keeps bringing up more things involving questions of the mom and Ben.
Hey, you know what? Mom is seems to be involved with Ben. He's like, it's probably just, it's charity.
Even Ben donates sometimes.
Yeah, it's like, but she went over to the hotel. Yeah, I probably just talked to him about that charity thing. He's like, yeah, but it seems that she also came here. Oh, he probably did want to, yeah, your mom told me about it. Yeah, your mom did tell me about it. I remember now. Breakfast. Yeah, it's like, right. Ding dong. I'm the doorbell. And she goes over the door. I got a bunch of roses here.
No card, though.
No card.
We don't know who sent them. It could be anyone.
It is.
Could be literally anyone.
It could be absolutely anyone. It could have been possibly Eileen herself.
Yeah,
Eileen
sending
just wants
roses to
roses.
herself.
Yeah, you got to treat yourself. You got to give yourself a present.
Once a day. Every day.
I'd like a dozen red roses,
also,
please.
Interesting stained glass, gold window up the stairs. It gave Doc Hayward he's ascending the stairway to heaven sort of vibe, which I thought was interesting.
I mean, he could very well die as one of these pieces.
Very true. Very true. And while Doc Hayward may appear as a heavenly celestial being to us, I think to John Justice Wheeler, there's only one true angel in Twin Peaks. And it's not Doc Hayward, it's Audrey.
What was he standing in front of?
I don't know.
There was this strange orb-based object that he was looking over.
I mean, I remember the sweater, but
it's a globe. It's like a bubble in a cooler with two tanks set onto this weird machination that he's just spinning this weird box in his hand.
Professor, I'm looking at it right now, and that is literally just a globe. Just an Earth globe. I know you believe in flat Earth, okay? So I know that this might come as a surprise to you.
That is not a globe.
That is just an Earth.
Look, I want you to look at this cooler and look at the shape of it and tell me that
it's not a cooler. That's a briefcase box. Okay,
what?
It's tall like a cooler, but that would not keep anything cool. It's got latches. It's clearly meant for storage.
What does the box in his hand do? What does the pipes at the side do?
Okay, the thing in his hand, I'm not actually sure what that is. That is a little weird. I feel like that might be something we're not supposed to see because it has little writing on it. It feels like that's a thing he just has on set. I don't know what that is. It's a detonation device of some kind. And the tanks behind look unrelated. They're just pipes in the background. It's like an eye washing station?
Maybe.
Because look, if you look over at the okay, actually that's an eye washing station.
But when you lean over the globe bubble thing?
Well, it's like dimensions. Okay, that's further back against the corner of the wall.
Do you push against this weird balloon globe objects and that's how the water comes out
the globe, they're unrelated. They're unrelated. No. Okay, so more in the foreground, there's the table with the globe Earth in a box.
I mean, the foreground has John Justice Wheeler.
Further in the background. There's the corner of the room that has an eye wash station up top above where we see the level of the tanks.
Fascinating.
That is definitely an eye wash station, I'm pretty sure, because the way it looks like a med kit almost. It's hooked up to things and it looks like it's at eye level.
What does John Justice Wheeler do again?
Finances.
Fascinating.
Anyway, his sweater. I have a trouble with orange and red. So I wasn't sure if this was black, white, and red. You told me it's black, white, and orange.
Yes, and so you went ahead, and instead of taking my word, you texted your roommate a picture off of your cell phone.
Okay, but he's in the past had to correct me on colors before, so I know he knows what he's talking about.
We are co-hosts.
I understand, but you haven't had years of correcting my color coordination.
I've had about a year of correcting you at Twin Peaks.
Because there was this one time a WWE pay-per-view where it was a cage match, and it was The Fiend, and it was all orange. No, okay. To me, it was orange, but it was actually supposed to be all red.
Yeah.
It was the whole screen was red for 15 minutes. It was horrifying to look at because it's such a color. But to everyone else in the room, it was red. To me, it was orange.
Fascinating. No, that's fascinating as far as eye pigments go, but I'm sure that you would appreciate all of this lovely...
It's still a black and white sweater.
It is a black, white, and orange sweater.
With a fire-related color.
With a color, certainly.
With a color, certainly. And, it's like the saying goes, if you bring a hammer, you better bring nails too.
Yep, because it seems that he is on to Audrey on his own personal affections, and he might even be propelling that onto Audrey just to assure her, hey, you got to call a spade a spade. if you're interested, you just gotta tell me.
Oh, and she loves the attention.
She loves the attention.
As soon as he starts complimenting her, she wants more compliments. So she seems to be encouraging this as well.
I don't know necessarily about that, because there's also this point where he sort of starts to lean in on her, and she almost like takes a step back. Like there is still the sense of
trepidation. I think there's this sense of caution, but I think it's a sense of hesitance toward pursuing something she genuinely wants. But there's still that sense of should I? Is it safe?
I think, yeah.
Do I trust?
I think I'm seeing a lot of that sense of questioning coming through on her, and I am quite interested.
Whereas John Justice Wheeler, a little more certain of himself. He is the one that first makes the comment that if she is continuing to act this way, that she's going to keep coming on to him. Eventually, he's going to take it to heart. That if you bring a hammer, you better bring the nails.
Yeah, and that was actually a quote from apparently her grandfather, too. Which, it's good to see more Horn individuals that we'll never see. Like Mama Horn.
It's good to see them by not seeing them.
Yep.
Right? And then John Justice Wheeler takes the initiative here, proposes that they have dinner on the plane at sunset. How romantic.
I mean, that seems like there's a lot of points to slide off, and how like your dinner can just like fly off the edge.
Oh, wait, we're inside the plane. We're not on the plane. You know what I mean.
Actually, I did not.
Really?
That is where my head went at first, just like watching the sunset.
Okay,
like,
if someone says you want to go eat on the table, you don't stand on the table.
Hear me out, though. Like, imagine seeing, like, a sunset through the tiny hole of a plane, okay? And seeing something like a sunset on the wing of a plane. It's far easier to see that sunset and more comfortable. So that's where my mind went.
So one has to be compromised, either safety or the sunset view. That's tough. That's really tough.
That is tough.
And speaking of compromises and things that are a little tough, it's tough to accept the Blu-ray restoration in the library, because there is a duration of maybe 5-6 seconds or so where it wasn't really restored, and I'm not really sure if it was like lost footage or some sort of technical issue or oversight, because it seems strange because you have the A to Z collection. I think if any collection
Z to A,
I will never remember. The Z to A collection, though, where you'd think they would have caught it, so I'm assuming it's something they can't fix.
Yeah, no, it is something. I imagine some things are more harder to restore than others.
This is the first time I think we've noticed something like this, though.
It is the first time, but at the same time, if you hit your mark 99% of the time, I think that there's plenty to be necessarily proud of on how well they have restored things.
Like the audio, this was straight unrestored.
Yeah, the audio was fine, but it seems like at least the majority of what we were seeing for the library was a little bit different in its overall visual, and I almost like it that way.
Interesting.
Like, again, it's the dustiness of it that really kind of comes through. It feels like this library is unused.
Well, if you ever want to watch the dusty Twin Peaks, I have my old DVDs here from the Gold Box collection that might be a little dustier for you.
Maybe. But no, I think that for this area, if it wasn't like something that couldn't be restored, I think that it does add to the experience.
I think you're someone at this point that you will defend anything Twin Peaks does.
I'll defend.
Even if it it doesn't really work.
I'm going to defend whatever the hell John Justice Wheeler has in his room.
Well, one nice side effect is we get to see Wyndemurl's disguise from multiple different visual perspectives. He's Edward Perkins.
Oh, yeah. No.
The poetry teacher. Or as I wrote in my notes, poetry teach. And, he just so happens to bump into Audrey at the local library. And Audrey says she's doing some research on civil disobedience. To which Wyndemurl responds, it is incumbent upon the young to rebel. Which, to some degree, yeah. Amen, cool. And then she, understanding that he's a poetry teacher, she asks him for some help with the poem that the Queens had received pieces of.
Yep.
The Percy Shelley poem.
Yep.
At which point he tells her to read it.
He recites it.
Well, no, first he has her recite it, and then he finishes the poem for her. At which point he says, in a totally normal, not creepy, stranger danger kind of way, gazing at you, reciting the verse of Shelley, you look very much like a queen.
And there's a point where he just says Shelley, then she's like, what?
What? She's over at the double R.
I love the idea, just like he's going in the whole time believing that Audrey is actually Shelley. Yes.
Look, he takes out some note cards in his pocket. Oh, my mistake.
I'm sorry. You're the Audrey one.
And, Audrey reacted about the way we're reacting right now, like some awkward chuckles, you know,
Yeah.
and then a little thank you, and Audrey walks off. And also,
I would have walked faster.
I would have walked faster, and again, no one's reporting these things. That's the thing that's really weird.
No, everything's okay.
Considering the history of the town in the past, like, year of Twin Peaks, but ever since Laura's death, the amount of crime that has happened, no one's reporting this? Like, literally the situation that happened with Donna is super alarming. People should know. Anyway.
I mean, it was reported with the whole entire move to the investigation with,
Yeah.
Wyndemurl. So things are getting reported.
I guess they are.
It's just there's some strange points in which I may not even know what to do. Like, if you had, like, a point where you were just, like, having a poem recited to you in the most creepy fashion, would you report it to the police personally? I mean, I would get out of there.
Yeah, I guess if I was Audrey, I would tell the father. I would tell Ben.
I would tell the father.
I would tell
Ben.
my very, very powerful dad. That's what I would do.
Ben is in a new state at this point. He is a chaotic element, so we do not know whether or not we can tell Ben things
That's
anymore.
true. Speaking of chaotic elements, Wyndemurl is smoking in the library. I feel like that's against the rules.
Not in the 90s.
Even in the late 80s, early 90s, that still shouldn't have been allowed in the library.
What are rules?
Smoke damage. to the
Except
books.
an idea.
I'm pretty sure that like damages books. And,
I'm
like,
pretty
colors them.
sure that it enhances the books.
You know, people like to smell books.
They love that sweet. Oh, love that stuff. Oh, just imagine just like, oh god, these books don't smell of nicotine enough, and just like get some packs
I
right,
gotta
and
find
just
one of those.
breathe heavily.
Ooh, that's got a little bit of tar in it.
Gotta get that tar, just rub it into the shelf.
Also, quick question: Wyndemurl versus Tajimura, who wore it better? And by it, I mean disguising.
For Tojimura or Wyndemurl. Wyndemurl keeps bothering me because he's got like 20 different disguises. Where does he store these in the first place in this tiny cabin?
I do believe like Leo helps him cosplay.
Yeah, sure. And he just keeps
What do you think, Leo?
What do you
These
think, Leo?
pants make me look fat?
There's usually this point where I would make a joke and it's like, oh yeah, we got 5 new characters. But nowadays I can say we have 5 new characters and they're all Wyndemurl.
So I would argue that Wyndemurl's disguises are not much better than Tojimura's.
I think that they are in the respect of they pay attention to just the smallest of details, and I kind of have to squint sometimes to be like, yeah, that is him. It's not someone who just is built and looks like him.
But you can figure it out, whereas Tojimura, you
was
didn't even know that was a woman, let alone a main character, Catherine.
That was a disguise, to say the least. I don't even know how to speak of Tojimura anymore. It is something. But in the meantime, I can at least recognize the time and craft that certainly goes into Wyndemurl's, and he does not certainly try to put on a bit of paint on himself to look and represent himself as not his race.
Fair enough. Now, Tojimura had tried to be business partners with Ben, although it was part of a ruse.
Yep.
But we do have Ben here reaching out toward a new potential business partner, or rather to strengthen and uplift the partnership that currently exists between himself and his daughter.
Yeah, it seems that he is trying to find someone who can tell him how it is. He wants someone...
A Bobby Kennedy to his Jack Kennedy.
Yep, someone that he can see as a fully reliable element in his life.
I do like how Audrey asks, like, oh, you mean like how Jerry's done for you? And Ben's like, I want the unvarnished truth, actually.
He doesn't even say actually. He doesn't say No. Here's the thing. Every time Jerry seems to have come up, like whenever he's like openly talking or someone talks about him, he just almost like it flies over his head. And the only time I know that Ben has recognized Jerry as an entity that exists
For the kitchen
was
scene?
the kitchen scene. Where else did Jerry die in the kitchen scene?
I cannot confirm or deny. We just haven't seen him since.
We just have not seen him since. That's the thing that makes me wonder if Ben is genuinely trying to push a new leaf, that he does not allow the echoes of Jerry, who, let's face it, is still in his toxic prime, to be the person making headway. In fact, when, he gets Audrey to agree to this proposal, Jerry's not going on the plane in order to try to communicate certain connections. That's Audrey.
Right.
She's going on her own jet adventure, minus the meal and minus the Jack.
Yeah, Ben believes that Audrey is the best man for the job.
Yeah, and I mean, I won't disagree in that sense. I'm actually impressed by his overall reflections on himself.
I think it's kind of
whether
crazy
it's
how
genuine
much,
or not.
I think it's kind of crazy how much we've gone in distance in this relationship, because at the beginning of the show, Audrey was the one who was purposefully sabotaging his business relationships by talking about like Laura's murder around people and like purposefully just making things incredibly awkward for the Norwegians and for anyone who's doing business.
I mean,
whereas now he's willingly sending her on her own to negotiate.
I think there's a level of potential recognition in that.
Yeah.
And having someone at the headway is either A, trying to get Audrey out of the way, or B, actually recognizing his faults and trying to make best on that. And
Well, the way that he wants to shove her out immediately, though, as soon as she agrees, that lends more credence to the idea of just get rid of her. Because as soon as she says, yeah, sure, he's like, all right, well, you leave in an hour. Bye. Pack your things. Go.
I don't know how Ben really does business.
Sure.
We don't know whether or not this was a Jerry case. I do have a feeling this is the way him and Jerry may have operated, and Jerry's just excited to go places.
I like to believe he would have said the exact same speech to Audrey, to Bobby, if she would have said no. Like, if Audrey said no, it'd be like, all right, can you send me Bobby next, please? And then Bobby comes in, and he's like, now, Bobby. Jack Kennedy once said, like, I like the idea that he tries to make Bobby his Bobby Kennedy.
Yep, Bobby. It's right in the name. It is in the branding. Trademark that Bobby. Now, Justice Wheeler actually does end up walking in on the situation, and Audrey even sort of like exchanges a look, and they kind of have to accept their situation with one another, in which, yeah, Audrey's going to be going away for a little while. And as Ben and Jack sit on the couch together, they have a little bit of a dialogue between one another, and Ben does actually wax and wane on like trying to be a better person on what that would mean. And Jack just goes ahead and says, you know what? I think that you need to tell the truth, and you got to start with the hard truth first. And the hard truth is that I'm in love with your daughter. And he's like, that is a hard truth. And he shares, I love the fact that he shares carrots like he shares cigars, like pulls it straight out of his coat and hands it straight to him. There. Can we appreciate not only like him switching from cigars to carrots, but also the fact that Ben is asking for goodness advice from a man named Justice?
It is beautiful. You also didn't mention, but he like takes off his shoes and scoots up on the couch in front of him in a very casual, non-professional, disarming way.
This is a man who eats the middle of his sandwiches. I don't know all of Ben's mannerisms.
I understand where you're coming from.
I think that the fact that we had to go through Confederate Ben time means that Ben can absolutely do anything, and I will look at it and say, that's Ben. That's normal Ben.
At the same time, think about the way he used to negotiate at the beginning of the show. You would see him kind of like vulture circle around people and kind of tower over them, speak closely in hushed tones.
But now he just he just scoots up just like he's at a slumber party. He's like, you know what? Let's talk about goodness and stuff. Like, how can I be a better person? You know,
it's really interesting, and the whole conversation ends with him being like approving of Audrey and the potential of Audrey and John Justice Wheeler.
Maybe not even like approving. There could be a sense of approval.
Well, he says
but
at the end, what a wonderful world.
What a wonderful world. But I feel that might be sort of the feeling of sitting on an ocean wave and just letting it all hit you. Just at least letting the acceptance in rather than guaranteeing the full acceptance.
Well, and there's an argument for that as well, because throughout the episode, Annie seems to be describing the world as sort of this sort of wonderful and strange reality. And we finally do get the line said in this episode later on by Cooper that, he may have no idea where this will take them, but it will be placed both wonderful and strange. So there's that sense, even in the Log Lady intro, they talk about how strange it would be if the source of inner peace was inside of us all along. That sort of wonderment and amazement at things. I think you have a good case there. One last thing before we leave Ben Horn that I thought was interesting.
Is it going to be okay?
Well, we don't know. Is that when he was talking to Audrey one-on-one, before John Justice Wheeler came in, he mentioned, when I think about Laura, when I think about the mistakes that I've made, I want to build a life of happiness for her whole family. You, me. Will you help me do that, please? So there's a lot of things of interest. One is that obviously invoking Laura. And Ben's relationship with Laura has always been a background element. And it's something that we know had a level of closeness because he had all the photos. But there's also a dark side of that closeness where he had slept with her when she was over at the One-Eyed Jacks. And there's a sort of dark perversion of that angle because Laura's the same age as his daughter. And in some ways, Laura's this weird daughter-like figure, but in a very dark, kind of sinister way.
Yeah.
So when he says, when I think about Laura, so he's still thinking about Laura. A lot of people in the Twin Peaks don't seem to think about Laura much anymore. But Ben still is thinking about Laura, and it makes him think about the mistakes he's made and is wanting to build a happiness for the whole family. But note, he says whole family and then says you, me. Doesn't mention the mom, doesn't mention Jerry. And then also outside, Johnny, who's been shooting these buffalo targets outside by the waterfall.
Yes, he has.
And it's interesting because, again, I don't get the sense that if he's truly trying to build happiness for his family, I mean, he's currently making moves with Eileen right now when he's married man to Sylvia. And it doesn't seem like he's even acknowledging Jerry's presence. And vocally, all he just says is, our whole family, you, me. I don't know if anyone other than Audrey is his family.
He does look out onto Johnny, and I'm just curious on that. I know that he's trying to establish a more firm connection between him and Audrey. Absolutely. He even admits, like, no, I've been kind of a shit for years.
Mm-hmm.
And
a rapacious heel.
You have your fancy Ben words.
That's what he said.
Mine.
I'm just
I
quoting the man.
know. You have your fancy Ben words, and I have mine.
There are Ben words.
There are Ben words.
There are Ben words belong to everyone.
Just you in the plural, all. But I think that with how he addresses Eileen being the one good thing that could have been in his life, like something that could have been positive for him, I think he's trying to take all the good and potentially push aside the bad. But I think that he should really take Jack's advice to heart. Face the truths, speak aloud the truths. Though we may never see Ben again because apparently he has secrets that can put him for jail for years and years and years.
Well, one thing you just kind of made me think of too is that if your theory's right and that Donna is a horn, that means that the whole family would not just include Audrey, that would include Donna potentially.
Yeah.
If that's part of the family.
Potentially.
Interesting to note.
And just as Benjamin Horne may be a father figure to all these people, illegitimate or otherwise, we have the return of the father figure in some ways to Cooper, if you will. This older, wiser man who may yell at you at a few times, but is indefinitely someone who is potentially fatherly, if not super friendly.
As played by a man who may be arguably, possibly, considerably the father of Twin Peaks.
Yes.
In my weird father pregnancy analogy I gave early.
I mean, it could be a mother, like...
An amalgamation. And Gordon Cole returns then with the Wyndemurl dossier, the classified portion of the Wyndemurl dossier. And we don't know the whole story, but he came back from Bend, Oregon. And when Cooper asks about it, we just get this weird explanation. Whole lot of shaking going down in Bend. Don't know what that means, but there's a whole lot of shaking going inside Benjamin Horne, so maybe, I don't know.
But it's in Bend, Oregon, not Bend, Oregon.
No, Bend, yeah.
Yeah, B-E-N-D.
Yeah, Bend.
Just imagine,
I'm saying Bend.
If you're bending, you might shake a little.
I understand, yeah, I get the joke. I'm just making Bend.
Bend. That is your stance.
We just hope that he doesn't break. Anyway, continuing. And then there's also another change of phrase that's used. When talking about the haloperidol we talked about earlier, he says that he was taking haloperidol when Wyndemurl went boyoyoing. Which, again, more of those sort of speech mannerisms that Gordon Cole has that we see at times with Cooper as well. Some sort of childlike, weird oddities.
I love some onomatopoeia. I love the word onomatopoeia.
So we went over the haloperidol, but the other thing that was in the dossier was that Wyndemurl had previously been on Project Blue Book. For 2 years in the late 60s.
Yep, apparently he got loaned out to the Air Force.
Which is so top secret that it seems like even Gordon Cole can't get clearance.
Yeah.
This is something that even the person in charge of Cooper and the FBI cannot touch this information from like 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's funny when you get some of that information. You know, he was on Project Blue Book, which... Apparently, we are looking more into the mysterious things and the fact that he's taking the same drug as a Mr. Philip Gerard. It's strange, isn't it? It's strange.
So what do you...
It's funny. It's funny and strange.
Do you have any particular thoughts, questions, or insight?
My first question is whether or not Wyndemurl had taken on Cooper before or after... Well, probably not after, but before or during like teaching young Coop the ways of the Force. Like how long of a time was it Cooper and Wyndemurl side by side? What's that timeline? Because wouldn't it be funny and strange, like he comes out of the Project Blue Book project and, he suddenly gets this protege named
That wouldn't
Cooper.
match up with the timeline.
It may not match up with the timeline. I'm curious on what the timeline was.
Well, because we had the late 60s as the Project Blue Book years.
Yeah, but we don't know how long he was on Project Blue Book. It continued, remember, with our good old...
It said that Wyndemurl had only been on for 2 years. It said he had a 2-year stint, basically, in there.
Okay, gotcha.
Unless I'm mishearing, I think the timeline would be that Wyndemurl was on Project Blue Book fairly young into his career, and then he didn't have the protege in the form of Cooper probably until the 80s.
Okay, interesting,
think.
interesting. Okay.
Because we don't really know how long Cooper's been on the Force solo,
Yeah,
but, Cooper's not that old.
absolutely.
So, I mean, I don't know. There is a possibility that it's not that far of a gap if Cooper was brought on earlier than I'm thinking.
Yeah, but and how long had they been working together initially? Because we have to wonder, say, for example, timelines in Twin Peaks. After all, Philip Gerard was in the bathroom for a short time, but ages at the same time.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So Gordon Cole, after having dispensed this valuable information, feels he needs an appetite that is quenched. He needs to go to the Double R Diner for some food. He's craving a steak so rare he could sell it at Tiffany's. But along the way to acquiring that steak, he sees a certain someone, one of the queens of Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Holy smokes, who is that?
Gordon Cole is the type of person that I would afraid to go out anywhere with. Just because I do not quite approve of his methods.
You know, he's a typical FBI agent, right?
Sure.
I don't even know what that means in this case.
I don't know either. So I'm just going along with sure.
I really enjoy Shelley Johnson's reaction, though, because she hears Cooper explaining who that is. Because Cooper has to yell Shelley's name for Gordon Cole to understand.
Yeah.
So Shelley just hears and does this little awkward wave from the background.
Yeah. And no, eventually Gordon Cole does approach Shelley Johnson and starts to prepare an order. And there's something interesting that goes on. For one, Shelley doesn't really notice the mechanism or something. She just kind of keeps reminding him, yeah, I can hear you. You can please put down your voice. And Gordon Cole is I can hear you. You don't understand. I've had to have people talk, try to speak up for me to hear, but I can hear you clear as a bell.
What do you make of that?
Well, it's definitely making Shelley a very Twin Peaksian element of the area. So I am fascinated by it. It seems to almost encourage this fascination and, may I say, fondness between Gordon Cole and Shelley. So don't know if that's going to be going anywhere.
Do you want it to go anywhere?
I would say dependent on them spending time with one another. I don't want it to be an immediate hitch. We are not looking for anything to go too extreme.
I'm also not sure the age. What ages these two are supposed to be.
Shelley is a married woman, and I assume that she is of adult age.
Yeah, we know she's an adult, but what is the age difference between them, actually?
For me, personally, as long as it's both consenting adults and they are both respectful of one another, I don't mind.
You seem to mind it a bit with Nadine earlier.
I reminded for Nadine because there's a lot of consent questions I've got to ask because this is also her current health condition.
Fair enough.
And the fact that she can break a person. I don't think Shelley and Gordon Cole can break each other.
But I guess the thing is that Shelley might be of the age where she could be his daughter. That's almost what I'm wondering is that, is there enough of an age gap where that's possible? Not to say those relationships don't exist. I understand that they do, but I think there's something at least eyebrow-raising with that.
Perhaps, but at the same time, if Log Lady wants to marry young, if Gordon Cole wants to marry young, if they want to have relationships and it's all consenting adults, that's great. Just please, Gordon Cole, at the very least, be more eloquent if you're going to be writing poetry about pie when you wish to speak forward to another person, instead of just kind of being whoa,
my
hello,
socks are on fire.
My socks are on fire. It's
Well, later Shelley apparently took Gordon Cole over to Doc Hayward's to check on his hearing.
Yeah.
We were spared that scene.
Sadly, I
almost wonder if that was cut content. I almost feel like maybe that was supposed to be shown.
Maybe not. Overall, I'm glad that Shelley is willing to help someone out like that she has just recently met. So overall, hope that goes well. But yeah, I think that the highlight, though, that we got to say, yes, Shelley Johnson and her actress have fantastic facial reactions throughout this.
Yes.
Again, a good highlight to the talent. I want to see more Shelley Johnson for that reason. But if you look in the background, look a little bit to the left, he's a little bit blurred out. He's a little bit blurry, but by the gods, does Toad just have these fantastic expressions himself? As like he just is trying to like enjoy his meal, but every time like Gordon Cole is like speaking, he even like gets halfway through a burger when like Shelley's speaking, but he's just so fascinated at this Gordon Cole thing. It's like,
No, he was definitely directed to react to everything in that conversation, and it's something so in the background that I think a lot of listeners who are familiar with the show probably have never even noticed it. So I would like to encourage you.
We were fully distracted. Like, we had to go back because it's just like,
once
what's
he realized
Toad
is back there judging the whole conversation.
Everything was gone then. It was just like focusing on the Toad.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage you to check out episode 25 with this diner scene when normally you would be looking at Shelley and Gordon Cole. Ignore them.
Toad.
Ignore them and watch Toad. It's really entertaining.
It's great.
It's really entertaining. Before we leave this situation with Gordon Cole, I do want to make one more comment, something for you to put a pin in. I'm not going to say where it goes, but I'm going to say I'm going to bring it up later, or I'm going to forget to bring it up later, and you're going to bring it up later.
Okay.
But when they're talking about who this is, who's Shelley Johnson, Gordon Cole says, kind of reminds me of that statue, the gal without arms, Venus de Milo. And then Gordon Cole's like, I don't remember the name of her, blah, 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 blah.
Milo. It was something with Milo, but that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. But put a pin in the Venus de Milo statue.
But it doesn't matter.
Put a pin in it anyway.
Just the Milo part.
Let him. But anyway, at the Double R, there's more than just Gordon Cole. There's more than just Shelley. We also have Annie in this episode.
Yep. We're getting a little bit more personality on Annie.
We are. Cooper is drawing symbols on the napkin, trying to work out what they could possibly mean. He stumbles in his doodles upon the idea of making 3 diamonds intersecting the 2 mountains symbol.
Isn't it funny? Because we saw the other episode with the billboard, and they were all, in fact, triangles, all positioned around each other. But I didn't realize, we could just put them wherever we wanted and change the shapes.
So the best defense I can think of for this is that you could imagine if the triangle had a shadow or reflection that mirrored under the triangle would be another half of it, forming 3 triangles into 3 diamonds. However...
And then rearrange them on top of each other.
However, it's a real leap of logic to assume that. But as Cooper later says, whether you buy into it or think it's just a lazy, cheap excuse for bad writing, Cooper says fate and coincidence factor largely into our lives. So fate or coincidence would have it that he is drawing that exact symbol at the moment that Annie happens to interrupt their conversation.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And they have a little conversation, a little talk, and there's just like having a little bit of, I want this food.
Well, before that, they have to argue over a chickadee on a Dodge Dart versus a finch on a Dodge Dart.
That's when she walks in and says, that's a chickadee.
I enjoyed that conversation. Chickadees are adorable. My favorite bird. What's your favorite bird, Professor? If it's not the American eagle, you're not a true patriot.
I guess you're not a true patriot.
No,
then.
I'm not. I like the chickadee.
My favorite bird is probably the hummingbird.
Why?
It's so cute. It's super flappy.
Okay, but chickadees go, Phoebe.
Yeah, but have you seen some sweet flaps from a cool little hummingbird littering around, just like on a sweet, sweet hover? I'm sorry, but hummingbird is easily the coolest.
That's fair. They're both better than the eagle.
Why?
Because, I don't know, eagles are scary. Anyway, another gem of a line I want to mention when Truman asks, what's a good cure for a hangover, and he recommends teetotaling and prayer. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yes.
I really enjoyed that joke.
Yes.
And Annie continues to give dialogue that I assume would make the professor suspicious. She says, I'm not sure where I am. I mean, I know where I am, but it feels weird being here. I've been out of circulation so long, I've forgotten the social niceties. Like, you're over here all the time talking about how Maddie just seems like she's some weird, clone amalgam thing. And Annie's over here talking wow, I feel like I don't belong in this universe.
Yeah,
and you're not even, reacting to this.
I reacted beforehand, this strange return of someone who seems a lot like Carolyn, and we have this weird mark on her wrist that is odd enough. And yes, her dialogue does make me think that there's something strange going on here, but Twin Peaks overall has had a dreamlike quality for so long that who knows who's going to wake up at any little moment. But yes, no, Carolyn is strange and suspicious, but at the same time, the thing that is in the foreground of my mind is like, I'm getting more of a personality out of you. I like this.
I also really like her personality. I mentioned this kind of in the last one, but I'm someone who very much appreciates the sort of blunt candor that we get out of her, and that Cooper also reciprocates.
Yeah.
She basically admits that, when someone asks you, how are you doing, you're supposed to just say, like, fine, and leave it at that. And she's trying to get used to the social niceties again because she's used to just not really having a lot of other people around. And she just clearly just states what's on her mind very directly, which prompts her to basically have this conversation with Cooper where...
I love it. There's just this point where she goes about, she's like, yeah, I'm supposed to say something like, I'm fine. Thanks, I'm fine. How about you? And Cooper does respond to that question being like, I'm fine, thanks. So a nice little
some
mirror.
Cute banter. It's cute banter.
It's adorable.
And it gets to this point where Cooper has to clarify to Annie that if he truly found Annie strange, he would say so. And he doesn't find her strange. Then he proceeds around that time to tell her a joke about penguins, which you make fun of my jokes. I think Cooper's jokes worse than mine.
Why?
I don't know. It's just not that funny.
The point of a joke does not have to be something in which can cause like laugh out laughter. It doesn't have to be something in which it's the greatest revolution. It makes you rethink humor. But I think that this one relies very much like the chicken crossing the road. Is something that is meant to subvert expectation, lean you in, and on just like how it falters is the humor in it side of it. It's like exceeds your expectation. It's like, well, this penguin, is it a tuxedo? It's like, maybe I am a tuxedo. It's something where you expect like a big punchline, but instead you just get joyful banter.
So when you're disappointed by a joke that's not very funny, you're like, yes,
you still laugh.
True art.
It is art. It is genuinely.
Here's the thing, Professor.
Genuinely, it is art. You
got done explaining to me what a joke is. How condescending, Professor. I know what a joke is. I know what an anti-joke is. No. I know what dry humor is.
I'm not asking you whether or not you know what a joke is. I think that it's just the idea of a joke is oftentimes very easily overlooked because of our subset expectations that we should have this strong punchline.
Professor, I have a joke for you. I want you to tell me your honest thoughts on this joke, okay?
Okay.
Owl cave.
I hate.
As Annie looks at the napkin, she's like, "Oh, hey, looks just like Owl Cave," and just like you could just feel in the room the professor's like hairs standing on end.
Two things.
Twin things.
One. Owl Cave as just a sheer concept of both owls
and caves
and alcoves in which could hide something. It is like, obviously we've been seeing more owls recently. The writing on the wall spells OWL. Which, if
you rearrange the letters, also spells love.
No, it does not. It spells low, and that's the route you're taking here. So.
Well, it's just like with the triangles turning into diamonds. You gotta like affect the W and turn it into like a V and an L. And
there's something that does genuinely bother me, though. And that is when you are given clues to something, and it is the information to help solve that just appears. There's nothing that could have hinted to it, or I hadn't seen anything about the owl cave or any sort of symbology. Even if it's like something small, like in the background, or if it's like on a little pamphlet someone's reading at one point, something to kind of like get things scratching. But it feels like a mystery is being solved on the outside with something that could have really engaged the viewer, if you will, on the inside. There was just nothing. And it's just like, hey, wait, that looks like the owl cave. It's like, where the frig was you? Like,
well, then even Harry knows what it is too, and Hawk knows what it is too.
Like, we were looking for owls. Owls has come up so many times, and no one's brought up the owl cave? Which I don't even... Do owls live in caves? I thought, like, owls just, like, were living in trees, just hanging out, just perching away, hiding amongst the foliage. But do owls live in caves?
Because Cooper had the premonition that the owls are not what they seem back in episode 1 of season 2.
No, they're just fuzzy bats, maybe. I don't know.
This is like 20 episodes ago. This information would have been helpful.
At the very least, like something for me to latch on, but no.
Fading coincidence, baby. You have to, in order to buy this, you have to argue or appreciate the idea that they're just vibing on some sort of like transcendental emotional logic, because We just happened to have Major Briggs and the log lady at the Double R noticing the tattoo. Like, the log lady had to notice the tattoo on his neck, or not the tattoo, the marking, I should say. And then they both had to go to the sheriff's office, tell Cooper about this, for Cooper then to doodle it on a napkin for Annie, the outsider of the town, to see the napkin and then comment, oh, it's like Owl Cave, the place that Harry Truman already knew about anyway.
Yep.
Harry, who had been around Cooper all this time and had never brought this up.
Did Annie live in Twin Peaks? Like, I thought Vivian lived outside, so I assume Norma came in for Hank. Or, like, she grew up here for a little bit of time, so maybe Annie did too?
I think it's a little unclear. And this is where I could be wrong. I don't think she did, because I don't think anyone has commented on, oh, Annie's back.
But at the same time, like, Norma knew Hank in high school and knew Ed in high school, so I can assume that they did live here.
Yeah,
but at the same time, it's just like everyone might know about.
Well, we don't know if Annie is a sister by both parents or like maybe by marriage, because we know Vivian's had a few marriages.
There's still like a route of entry potentially here, though.
Yeah,
so
it's uncertain. It's uncertain.
But thanks, Annie, for coming around to tell us about LK, because no one else did. No one else thought of it.
And Annie's also here to talk to Shelley. Have some girl talk. And Shelley wants Annie to join the beauty pageant, which Annie replies that the real world is strange enough without being part of all that.
I guess, perhaps. It is.
Annie also says that being around men is weird. And she starts to ask questions about Dale Cooper to Shelley, denying, though, that she has any, like, actual interest in him. Of course not. But...
Little Dale Cooper, little Cale Duper, who's that guy?
But Shelley smiles knowingly. Shelley knows what's going on. She can read the room. They don't call her the Queen of Spades for nothing.
Yeah.
She knows a spade when she sees one. She calls it like it is.
She can see everything and everyone can hear her, because that is the way Shelley Johnson is. Apparently.
True dat. Later that same day, presumably, if time works the way I think it did in this episode.
No.
We get Annie at the Great Northern establishment at the bar. Clearly a fish out of water, not knowing what to get it for a beverage.
Yeah, what's everyone drinking? Rum. Oh,
apparently
I'll have that.
Rum is popular with the ladies.
It's like, you want a gin with that? Yes.
Wasn't it tonic?
Oh, yeah,
It was tonic, not gin.
It was tonic. Gin and tonics are very popular. Rum and tonics are delicious too.
I wouldn't know. I don't drink.
I do.
Well, I'm like
I
Annie.
have the alcohol. I have the meat. I have the power.
You have the vices. I don't. I'm like Annie.
Vices of power.
Are we the White and Black Lodge here? What's going on here? The White and Black Lodge were the friends we made along the way. Yeah, I'm Annie before she left the convent. You're her at the bar becoming the sin.
I am the sin.
But she orders, and Cooper walks up, approaches. It's interesting. He was talking to Diane about Owl Cave, very important subject matter. But when he sees Annie, he stops. He doesn't even like say goodbye to himself in the recording or to Diane or whatever. He just immediately clicks and then moves forward. This is more important than talking about Owl Cave into the tape recorder for Diane.
Yeah, no, it is definitely something that is very intriguing, to say the least, with Cooper's new infatuation. Which, by the way, I still am bothered by that. It's like, oh, so you're in love.
Yeah, because we get a scene earlier at the diner where Truman picks up on Cooper's feelings. And I think it's really cool how it mirrors the beginning of the show where Cooper was able to ascertain that Truman was in a relationship with Josie.
Yeah.
This is the flip side of that Truman now knows Cooper enough, not through pure intuition, but through knowledge and acquaintance to detect Cooper's changing sentiments.
Yeah, which it seems he's being sentimental. It seems he's interested. The word love is just flung around.
I think being in love and falling in love has a different meaning than love. And I can't remember which one was said. Did they say how long have you been in love with her, in love, versus how long have you loved her? Because I would argue, though it is a small semantic difference, I would argue there's a different meaning.
Lately, he says that how long have you been in love with her?
And again, I would argue that colloquially,
you are inside of love.
In love is more about infatuation. It's the emotional feeling.
If love were a hot tub, he would be pushing his head down into it.
Yes. For the first time ever, I agree with you. Let it be known.
Let it be known.
Let it be known. Either way, we get more lines from Annie at the bar. She says, I feel constantly amazed, stunned. Music, people, the way people talk and act. And the meta-commentary part of my brain is starting to activate and question something to plant in our brains as we continue watching. Is there anything going on here with Annie being a stand-in for the viewer of Twin Peaks? Because when she's talking about the music and the people and everything acts so strange and different, and she had TV at the convent, that was notably mentioned. She had cable TV.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, is Annie describing Twin Peaks? Like, is Annie reacting to Twin Peaks being so different and weird the same way we did when we first came to Twin Peaks? And the way Cooper kind of did when he first came to Twin Peaks? What's going on in that sort of meta sense? Because I do get that vibe, especially with music being brought up. What is she talking about? I think of the show's soundtrack, but if she doesn't mean that, does she mean like the radio? Does she mean the Great Northern playing music at the bar? I guess like the convent might not have had any music. It's quite possible, but it's just feels like an on-the-nose thing because Twin Peaks is very much known for its soundtrack.
You know, it's as they say with these birds, these little chickadees that are flying through the air. The air is filled with music, you know.
Where I come from, the birds sing a pretty little song. Mm-hmm. And there's the moment where Cooper looks at her wrist and sees that marking. I love, I'm in love, one would say, with the way that that screenshot freezes. That it doesn't have the live footage, it just has the sort of moment stopped in time. Mm-hmm. It's probably just a way to, like, you know, quickly communicate the information without having to have Annie hold her arm there for a prolonged period of time awkwardly. But I actually really love it from like an editing standpoint, just the visual standpoint of time slowing down and freezing. It creates a sort of jarring break in reality, which makes it seem really ominous. Mm-hmm. That whatever is going on with that marking stopped time. I think that's really cool.
And she quickly pulls back because she seems very uncomfortable about it.
There's something going on there. And she mentions around that time that she failed before, and she's afraid it might just happen again. Which, what is the failure? What does that mean? And Cooper himself has also experienced failure in the past. Multiple times that he's come to regret and had a burning regret over, involving Caroline.
I mean,
how does that factor in? Does it? I mean,
yeah, Caroline. Looks quite familiar.
Sweet Caroline.
I mean, there's different ways you can definitely believe, interpret, or bring forward as an idea. Mm-hmm. The strongest one, it would seem, in my head at the moment, is that she may have had that scar and recognizes her time at the church, may have recognized her potentially giving up, if you will, and that could be considered a very, very bad sin, that she sees that as a personal failure, especially with her environment. So, I hope Annie is doing okay, and I hope that this is just a strange Twin Peaks thing, because that is a very scary place to be.
For sure. And Cooper is trying to make that place less scary. He volunteers, he offers to help, and she asks, can you? And he says he wants to. And she says she's stubborn, extremely willful, and she starts kind of, again, going into that sort of insecure mode where she's talking about expectations, and he's like, Annie, I don't expect anything. And at the end, she accepts his kind and generous offer. He's almost trying to be the ambassador to the real world again. Between two worlds, a magician longs to see. Maybe he's chanting, perhaps? If you look at the two worlds, the world of the convent and the world of Twin Peaks reality.
I did not expect this was going to be the episode where we're just going to keep referencing like the past experiences with the Black Lodge with him. But
I can't help it. To me, when I hear Cooper and Annie talking to each other and the weird sense of going on, my mind goes to the lodge as it goes to the meta stuff. Maybe my conspiracy corner might be popping up here. We'll see.
Yeah.
We're not quite there where I can, spill all my beans.
Right.
Like Wyndemurl, I must hold some of my cards back.
Completely fair.
Speaking of narrative choices, Owl Cave. Let us talk more about Owl Cave. I know you want to. So prior to going to Owl Cave, we get Andy spelunking practice in front of Lucy. Lucy, notably, is playing chess. She's continuing her efforts of being the best student of Pete. And she's also reading a chess book while she's playing chess. But on the table is a Tibet book, because the show has not forgotten about Tibet.
Oh, boy. Yeah, no, there's a Tibet book. Maybe it has, because here's the thing. The Tibet book is settled right next to her as she's reading off of chess and playing on chessboard. But what sits a little bit above this Tibet book, around the little binding edge of it, is a calendar. So that means that at the very least, she used the calendar after a point of Tibet, if we are going to rank the order of things stacked on one another.
Presumably.
It's hard to read a book with a calendar on top, I believe.
Have you done it before?
No.
I feel like it'd be easy to lose track of time that way because you wouldn't be able to see the days because you have a calendar. You wouldn't be able to look at the calendar because you'd be holding it with the book.
That seems like a strange mannerism, just like every time you're done with a book, just stack a calendar on top to make sure you're on the same day. But around Twin Peaks, I imagine that's maybe necessary.
To know tethered to reality where you are. Lucy thanks Andy for helping out during the Weasel riot. It's more than she could say for a certain dick they both know. Who could she be referring to?
He'd probably died.
I mean, his nose might have died. We'll find out. And Andy is, again, spelunking. Hawk is around, barely even reacting to the whole situation.
This is a day in life.
This is a normal day at the
Just
police
yesterday,
station.
the place was filled with chessboards and little things of honey all over the place. Mugs settled all over the place. So I'm just imagining, like, he has, like, these cups filled with honey, Pete, and that he just, like, has to pour down, drink for himself, and go to a new chessboard and keep consuming that sweet, sweet honey.
How do you think, like, little Nicky's doing these days? Because we haven't heard about that.
Oh, he's dead.
I'm
just assuming everyone who is not mentioned is being pushed into the center hole of Twin Peaks.
Like Lucy's sister or whatever, that one episode where you got really annoyed by her?
Yeah, no, she's in the hole in Twin Peaks.
She's in the hole along with little Nicky. Oh, no, they're trapped with little Nicky.
Actually, little Nicky, if he is the devil like he is dressed up, that hole leads to little Nicky's little personal hell. That wasn't like Andy just like putting an image in his head. No, he was seeing the future. Shelley Johnson has the powers to let anyone hear her, and we have Andy who can see the future. So, yes, sure, why not?
So it's not that little Nicky is trapped with them. They're trapped with little Nicky.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Yep. Andy, unfortunately, this does allude to the fact that Andy will be pushed into the hole of Twin Peaks.
Spicy.
Sorry, Andy.
Sorry. Rip. Cooper trusts in Pete's chess judgment. He is confident that the next move is the right one. And from what I ascertained from the conversation, it sounds as though if Wyndemurl acts as expected, he's going to have to make a tough choice. And if he were to go for the next pawn, he'd be forfeiting his bishop, which would lose him the early advantage in the game.
He's going to do it, though?
I don't know.
I do not think Wyndemurl wants a win. He wants a game. So if he gets hit willingly, gets a bishop struck, that means he is getting Dale Cooper to actually play, to actually take pieces.
So if losing a pawn or a piece on Cooper's side, presumably Cooper's side, again, who knows what side everyone's on, that means someone dies, then what does it mean if Wyndemurl loses a piece?
Someone dies.
Probably either way, right? Okay. They actually go to the Owl Cave later. Andy is not doing so great. He's falling down, but he's fine.
What if it was like someone lived? Just like if a quick piece is taken from his side, suddenly the vagrant comes back to life.
Oh, that'd be sick. Let Wyndemurl win it. No, we don't want Wyndemurl to win. That'd be still make him lose. Okay, I got you. I had to think through that logic here real quick. Andy is failing. Hawk then mentions, by the way, that when he was a kid, he would play around this owl cave and he'd pretend it was haunted by fierce ghosts. And it's like, thanks, Hawk, for never mentioning this place at all during any of our conversations about owls. Hawk leads them to a symbol on the cave wall that clearly,
it's a certain symbol. Guess what's on top of the symbol?
It must be what the owl is looking dramatically at as it cuts in.
The owls come through, they fly through the air, they make fun sounds. Everyone screams, doesn't know what to do, and Andy hits the fire on the symbol.
With his pickaxe.
Fire.
See, Andy needed to be there.
Walk with me to the owl cave.
But in a move that's honestly really baffling, it appears they saw that the block had been removed. The middle diamond that intersects the two
prequel
mountains.
To the Legends of Hidden Temple. Suddenly we see a little alcove start to shake.
Well, so that middle diamond is removed. The one that's balanced between the two mountains, that's internal. That one pushes out, revealing the symbol. Kind of looks like a diamond with the mountain sides on each one. You can almost look at it like an ant head almost.
It looks like a happy penguin face.
Oh, no, I think upside down it does, doesn't it? Are you talking about upside right or upside down?
I'm talking about the diamond looks like an open beak, and then the two peaks look like the happy emoticon eyes.
Or an owl flying towards you.
I don't know.
Okay, anyway, point being, this symbol, whatever you want to compare it to, is on this little levery thing. The crazy part to me is that would mean that they found that, they saw that, and they left.
I mean, what else is there to do? Like,
inspect it, because Wyndemurl just waltzes in later.
Yeah,
and just straight up sees it,
like,
and knows what he does. Like, finds it out very quickly.
I'm assuming that they must have said Owl Cave around the bonsai tree, but when we went back to the scene, they just said that they were going to a cave. I'm assuming it's the well-known cave in Twin Peaks that maybe Wyndemurl found out that way, because the other insinuation is my craze theory that I'm going insane with, in which Cooper and Wyndemurl may very well be the same.
I mean, I think it's most okay. So either it's your theory, or they could have just been talking near the bonsai tree.
Yeah, that's what I said. And I'm almost hoping it's the bonsai tree thing, because I think I am going mad every time I go into this.
Hey, plausible doubt here.
I would like to be right, but at the same token, I feel like I'm taking so much of a stretch to be right that I am the bridge.
Would you like
holding
to be right?
These two landforms together?
Would you like to be right because you like being right, or because you think it's a good idea for the show?
I just like playing with ideas.
Because you told me before you want to be surprised and you don't necessarily want to be right and predict the show.
I don't have to be.
No, you don't have to be, but it seems like you really want to be.
It's all dependent on whether or not the predictions are satisfying enough by how it is, how the conclusion is presented, or the lack thereof of conclusion even at times. I don't need to be right. In fact, that's never been my goal. It's always that sense of you can't help but guess. You can't help but have the fun of just saying aloud something that just seems fun and interesting. I think that engagement has always been my goal more than it has ever been to be right. So
you still want to be right, though.
I want to guess. That's it. I don't mind if I'm right or wrong. Just give me a fun time. You said a moment ago
you want to be right. You did say those words.
There is a point in me that does, yes, but it's much more of a complicated pot that I'd rather just guess.
So, speaking of guessing, we got the Owl Cave. Wyndemurl inverted the symbol. Rumblings started to happen. Where do you think the show is going moving forward?
Again, everything shakes, and it looks like the wall is pretty false inside there. It's the prequel to the Legends of the Hidden Temple. We're going to see a large face that kind of goes through, and we're going to all be challenged to a series of fantastical, challenges, and see if we can win. What did they even win in Legends of the Hidden Temple?
I never watched it.
A trophy? A trip to the place that has the amusement park that I can't recall the name
Universal
of?
Studios?
Universal Studios, that's the one.
Is that the one?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
cool.
usually like a prize that people would win on Nick shows. So yeah, maybe Cooper will go to Universal Studios.
Okay.
Truthfully, there's not enough information out quite yet. It seems to...
And sometimes things just happen because you write a thing on a little napkin. So anything could happen, right?
I believe that either Wyndemurl will find something that will be the ace in his sleeve, or something's going to be happening with the owls, in the owl
That's a
cave.
safe bet. That's like if you're investing and you want to do a safe investment. Owls. Invest in owls in Twin Peaks.
Maybe it's like the flipped switch, like if he turns around, that's the owl off button.
No more owls.
owls.
Now the owls are what they seem. That's beautiful. That was beautiful. I have one wonderful and strange question of the week for you.
Just
Professor.
one?
Just one.
This is not traditional, Kalil.
Unprecedented.
Don't you remember those days in which you would ask 20 wonderful and strange questions?
Man, they feel like they happened 20 episodes ago.
Yeah.
So my question of the day, curiously for you, is since we are going to at some point in the future look at the David Lynch filmography, what do you predict David Lynch's films are going to be like? Based on what you've seen from Twin Peaks, based on the ways I've spoken about David Lynch around you, or any other things you know about Lynch, what do you think going into his films is going to be similar or different from Twin Peaks?
I've heard very minor things from you. I've heard you also having conversations with me on how heavily David Lynch is placed on a pedestal whenever it comes to Twin Peaks, and how we keep going on to different directors and writers that do not have David nor Lynch inside their name through each of the episodes.
Could be their middle name. We haven't checked.
Potentially. So, that being said, I can only imagine he is a man who wants to play with the medium, and I imagine that we will have more dreamlike ideas that will be emphasized in, hopefully different ways than what we've seen in Twin Peaks.
Anything else?
What? Speak louder.
Anything else?
What?
Angelo Badalamenti.
Speak louder, I can't hear you.
Angelo Badalamenti.
Angelo Badalamenti.
Angelo Badalamenti.
Speak louder.
Speak louder.
Angelo Badalamenti.